Welcome to the Ordinary Marathoner podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Ordinary Marathoner podcast. My name's Coach Scott. I'll be your host today. I got a great show for you guys today. I got another great guest. Going to bring her on in just a moment. As always, you can find this in the back episodes of our podcast at our website, ordinarymarathoner.com. Check that out if you get a chance. You can also find us on most of the aggregators, places like Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play. Wherever you guys get your podcast downloaded, check those out. A lot of those have ratings, and if you like, and if you want to be really kind to us, you can click that 5-star button. Love seeing those 5-star ratings on those aggregators, so please help us out. You can also find our podcast over at our YouTube channel, along with some other stuff we got going on over there. We're up over 100 subscribers. I want to thank all you guys for all your help with that. The latest podcast that we had out, well, actually it's 2 podcasts ago now, with Grace Lindell and her father, Dean Lindell. Just knocked it out of the park. By far and away our most watched video. So check that out if you get a chance over there. We got our Facebook group thriving these days. A lot of people posting. It's getting close to marathon season. A lot of you guys getting ready for your races, and love seeing it. You got to add yourself to the discussion group. It's a closed group. Add yourself to it. We put you right through. You can join the conversation or be a lurker if you like. Sometimes you just want to find a little bit of inspiration or motivation, and sometimes just watching other people do it is motivating enough. And we appreciate all people that come into our group and check it out. And, check it out for a while. And if you feel like you want to add some stuff to it later on, by all means, you participate when you feel like participating. Fine by us. You can also find us over on Twitter at Ord Marathoner. That's O-R-D Marathoner. Follow me there and I'll follow you back. And guys, we are probably about a week from opening up our Team Ordinary concept. Been working on that for a good, month and a half, 2 months now. A lot of really great feedback from that. It will be rolling out officially, I believe early next week we're shooting for. I gotta say, I ordered a whole bunch of swag for Team Ordinary. And it's just been delayed. It's kind of been a little bit annoying, to be honest. And I just don't want to wait anymore for it. So we're going to just start it. We're going with it next week. So look for that opening up. I'll have more details to come later this week. With that, let me introduce today's guest. I don't know too much about her. I know she is a first-time Ironman finisher as of about a week and a half ago, and an exciting finish, I must say. And you can find her over at Instagram at the Danny Beast, DANIBEAST. Let's welcome Danielle Rosvally to the podcast. Welcome, Danielle.
Hi, thanks, Scott. I am so happy to be here. Really excited.
I think it's our honor. It's our honor to have you. Really, I think a very exciting day you had.
Yes, that is one way to put it. Yes.
Very exciting day you had, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the inside story to it, because I think, a lot of us over at our Facebook discussion group, I think it kind of came out of the blue that you were doing Ironman. The group, I don't think a lot of people knew that you were doing it. And then right in the last minute, I think you mentioned it, and a whole lot of people tracked you, and we got our money's worth.
Yeah, well, so did I, as it turns out.
I guess so. But listen, I think I want to fill in some of the blanks first. I want to kind of start at the beginning. And this is one of the great things about doing these Ironman podcasts is really, you would think it's almost like the same story as people do these races, but it's really, I've said it before that, a lot of these Ironman events, 2,500 people start, and I could probably do 2,500 interviews, and they would all be unique and different in their own right. This one, I think, is going to be especially unique. So why don't we start at the beginning and find out why, what made you decide that you wanted to do an Ironman, and was this, what kind of background did you have coming into this decision, and how did this all come to pass?
So I was not an athlete for the first 20-something years of my life. Self-described fat kid, couldn't run a mile in gym class. And then I was getting my PhD and desperately needed a reason to leave my house. So I started running. And, it's typical story for runners. Like, you run a 5K, then a 10K, half marathon, full marathon. And eventually, over the course of a couple of years, I was running marathons and started chasing some big marathon goals. And my husband, Mike, who will become an important part of the story, had always wanted to do an Ironman because he saw Kona on TV as a kid. I'm sure that's pretty typical. But I was a little hesitant. I was not quite sure that I was Ironman material, not quite sure that I wanted to be Ironman material. That sounded like a lot. And one day I listened to a lot of podcasts, yours included, but also Marathon Training Academy, who was interviewing Sean Astin.
Sure. The Hobbit.
Yes. And he is an Ironman.
And Goonies, I got to say, too. I got to mention Goonies. That was a great movie.
He's an Ironman. And literally the words out of my mouth were, well, if a Hobbit can be an Ironman, then so can I. So Sean Astin. But that was several years back. We were living in Boston when I was getting my PhD, and things are prohibitively expensive in Boston. So we were doing CrossFit, which is a wonderful form of athletic achievement. But eventually, fast forward a couple years, I got a job at the University of Buffalo. I'm a career academic. And so we moved to Buffalo, New York, where you cannot swing a dead cat without hitting an Ironman out here. Everywhere. There's a thriving triathlon community, and we didn't really know anybody, didn't really have any friends. And we knew Mike wanted to be an Ironman, so we joined up a local tri club. And before we knew it, you are the people you associate with, right? And it sort of drove home that you don't have to be a crazy athlete to be an Ironman. I mean, you do, but normal people can turn themselves into something extraordinary.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And, it's funny because we did talk about a similar thing with one of our athletes who lives in Colorado. And it's sort of like when you live in that area, and it's almost like when you get outside and you feel guilty that you're not out there running with everybody else, because it's all around you. Like you said, it's, you get kind of ingrained in your community, and it's in a healthy way, which is good. It's good to have a community like that. So keep going. I don't want to get in your way.
Yeah. It was totally key, because also out here, I mean, we've got 2 Great Lakes for open water swimming. And we now had people who were swimming in the water, biking on the roads, doing things that we were runners, but we hadn't really thought, oh, I guess you can bike on the road with cars. So the community around us really fostered us and helped us grow into the eventual realization that, this is possible. And since it was Mike's dream, of course, I was supportive. And throughout our relationship, we've done several athletic endeavors together. And usually I'm the one who's like, hey, let's run a marathon. Hey, let's do a Spartan trifecta. Hey, let's whatever it is. But this time he was like, hey, let's do an Ironman. So I was like, okay, I guess that's what we're doing.
So did you did you mess around with like a shorter distance one first, or did you just go all in for the big one?
We did a half last year, because we wanted to just make sure that
dip your toe in the water a little bit, right?
Yeah. But the half was the first distance. En route to the half, we wound up doing an Olympic.
Yeah.
But not really an exhaustive triathlon background.
Yeah. So did you have any swimming or any cycling before, or this was just all brand new?
So I was a lifeguard and a swim instructor many, many years ago. So I knew how to swim, but I was never a competitive swimmer. Biking, however, it had been several decades since I got on the bike. I got my bike maybe 18 months before my Ironman, and yeah.
So all right. So now you kind of got the swimming, and you kind of got the biking, I guess. And what made you pick Mont-Tremblant?
It's one of the few that's driving distance from where we are, and a lot of people here either do Duplessis or Tremblant, and we had some friends who were going up to do Tremblant this year. But also, my grandfather passed away when I was 8 when we were on vacation in Mont-Tremblant.
Oh my God, yeah.
So when I found out that I had that connection, I was so young, I just knew we were in Canada. I didn't know where we were, but I was like, oh, well, that seems like it's, I don't know, fate, destiny, what you will.
Yeah, I agree. It's like it's calling your name.
Yes.
So you decide to do this So all right. So now you decided to do an Ironman. Now you said you bought the bike 18 months before. Now I know you can't really register right? It's like you need to be within a year before you can register. So did you take those 6 months, and was that like just a trial kind of? Was that still part of the trial and error to see if you could eventually do the Ironman, or was it, was it? I don't know how ingrained were you in Ironman training before you were even registered?
Yeah, so that 6 months was the period leading up to our half, which I have to say.
Which half did you do?
Barrelman.
Okay, sure. That's right in your neck of the woods. Yeah,
so very different course. Barrelman is for those who don't know, it's wonderful. The swim is in the Welland Canal, which was an Olympic swim area, and it's very flat, mirror flat. So that's kind of like Tremblant, but the bike is pancake flat.
Nice.
It is point to point, pancake flat, and then the run is pretty hilly. So like you could not ask for a more different bike course.
Oh, right.
Also, a very friendly race for first timers. They really pride themselves on making like a safe environment for first time athletes. So that was pretty great.
And I think that race is coming up soon for this year too. I think a friend of mine, Jim Simcoe, is doing it. We had Sheila Trelevin. She's a pro female athlete that did your race. And she's insane. She finished in like 10 and a half hours. But she does that one because she lives near you, and that's kind of her backyard. So I'm hearing good things about that race. I'm going to maybe have to look into that one myself one of these days. So lots of good things. So, all right. So now you do the half, and you feel okay, or you feeling?
Yeah, I do the half, and it was the year we did it last year. It was like 95 degrees all day long. It was a tough day to be out there, and definitely had some heat related issues, but come off the half and feel pretty okay. So it was like, okay, all right, this feels doable. And having done the leap from half marathon to full marathon, it was kind of in the back of our heads that like, this is not twice the effort.
Yeah.
It's more like 3 or 4 times the effort.
A lot of people equate sort of like that half Ironman with a full marathon for whatever reason. I hear a lot of people talking about it. I actually find a full marathon to be more difficult than a half Ironman. Don't ask me why. I think I probably spend more time in a half Ironman than I would in a full marathon. So you'd think it might be the opposite, but I do, for whatever reason. I find I guess maybe it's the just the change in disciplines, and that it gives you a little bit of rest from discipline to discipline. What was your feeling on that? Would you rather do a full marathon or a half iron?
I think I'd rather do a half iron because it breaks up mentally a little easier.
Yeah.
And I just like what makes you feel more alive than like swimming in a giant body of water, right? Like, biking beautiful roads, right?
It does. Yeah, it does. It's a different animal, definitely, for sure. And it's, I think once you start getting into it and you kind of feel comfortable with the 3 disciplines, because I think that's a major hurdle for some people when they're starting out. A lot of people just fall in love with it, just the sport itself. And apparently it bit you guys as well. So now you finish your half, and did you sign up immediately after the half for Mont-Tremblant?
It was fairly immediate. The Barrelman was a week earlier last year, so it was like early September. Now it's like mid-September, so I think there was a couple weeks of like, should we or shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Before we signed up, but I'm gonna say we probably signed up in like November sometime, and then started training. We hired a coach because first time out of the team. So we worked with Mark Wilson at Wilson Endurance Sports, who is fantastic, highly recommend, and started with him in January. Now, that being said, our training looked a little different from other people's. We use this method for marathon training also. We do a lot of, I know like traditionally triathletes are basically like swim, bike, run, and that's pretty much what you do. We do a lot of weightlifting and cross training. Yep. Because just trying to like alleviate junk miles on the legs. Also, I like barbell work. So
no, that's good. That's good.
And I'm good at that. Whereas I'm not, none of the 3 sports in triathlon come very naturally to me. I have to work very hard to be mediocre at them. Whereas barbell work, I'm just a bigger, stronger person. So that makes me feel happy and fulfilled. So we do a lot of barbell work instead of sort of running during the middle of the week.
So did you feel, all right, so let's do like the 2-minute Rocky, training montage here. In your training, did you feel, did that make you feel more or less ready for the task at hand in the long haul?
Long haul, definitely. Oh my God, a little column A, a little column B, right? Like, you have days where you get off the bike and you're like, I am invincible. And then you have days where you like crawl home in tears, like I'm never going to be an Ironman. You know, I bought new tires for my bike because I had like an older set of tires on them. And I had to go like change my tire when I took it off the fluid trainer. Because here in Buffalo, we were on the trainer till like April because it just was too cold.
Yeah, can't go outside.
Yeah. So I took my bike off the trainer and I had to change the tire. And I had this new tire and it was like a thick-walled tire. I could not get the tire on the bike. I swear I had an existential crisis trying to get this thing on my bike. And I like came upstairs in tears, like tire in one hand, wheel in the other. And I was like, I'm never going to be an Ironman. You know, like some days you're invincible. Some days you can't change your own damn tire.
Well, the one thing that I would say that Tremblant does better than any other race I've seen is that they go out there with motorcycles, and you probably saw them with whole tire sets on them. So if you have a flat tire, it's tire off, tire on, pop, you're going. Of course, if that guy on the motorcycle decides he wants to go home after the race and never returns all those tires, he's got $1,000 wheel sets on there.
Right. Well, my wheels are cheap, so
yeah, mine too.
Probably the one on the back of the moped was more expensive than my wheels.
Right. But at least they have a really good support system there, and you'd think almost that every Ironman would be the same, but it's not in that respect. Now, I had a flat tire in Lake Placid, and I had a flat tire in Maryland, and both occasions I just got lucky, and there was staff there to help me out. I practiced changing my tire. It takes like 20 minutes for me to do it. I'll never be good at it. It takes a pro, probably like 8 to 10 minutes, but, for me, so you know how it feels. It's just one of those things. You just kind of hope it doesn't happen. Right.
Yeah. I knew from my training going in, I knew it was going to be close. It was like, Doctor Strange in Endgame. Like, I have seen 10,000 potentials, and there's only one where we win. Everything had to go right. I knew that going in. So, yeah. Well, if I was down a tire, I was probably down a race.
Well, I remember you saying when you mentioned that you were going to be doing the Ironman. I remember you saying like 17 hours. So. Were you? I mean, did you have going into the race? Did you have sort of a plan to just make it under the wire? Was that kind of the plan? Were you trying to like kind of pace yourself, or was it like, all right, maybe I'll have a good day and I'll be much better than this, but I'm probably just going to have to suffer through and try to get under that 17 hours?
Yeah, I was hoping that I would have a good day, but I knew because we were lucky enough, we were able to go up and actually ride the course in our training. That's
good. That's good because that's no easy course.
No, and Tremblant is awesome because the entire village year round is basically devoted to Ironman training. I mean, not in the winter, they're a ski village when there's snow, right. But all spring and summer, they have a permanent training course up marked with like signs on the side of the road every 5 kilometers. And it is basically the course, like 90% the actual course you're going to ride. So yeah. We had gone up and done 2 loops of that as our last long break. So I knew what it was going to feel like, and I knew how long it was going to take me. There wasn't going to be any magic in the 3 weeks of taper. I mean, some, but like,
right.
Right.
It's a hard course, I tell you. So I did the half, and that last like 6 mile out and back. I remember finishing it and thinking, man, I can't even imagine doing that twice.
It's a little soul crushing. I mean, what it does make you do is it makes you say, all right, I need to leave some in the tank for this last stretch.
Yeah.
And the thing about it being marked permanently is exactly how far you have to go up Duplessis. It's 8 kilometers because it's 72 kilometers right at the base, and then the turnaround is right after the 80K mark.
Yeah.
So you can count it down because it's marked every kilometer up on Duplessis. So, I counted it aloud every time. I did it 4 times, twice in training and twice on the race. And every time I counted it aloud, 8, 7, 6. And mentally, it's really helpful. And I imagine other courses, it wouldn't be quite the same.
So knowing that you were going to be cutting it close, and what were your thoughts as you say, as race day is approaching, you're in your tapering phase, or hey, you're even in the car on the drive up. Are you nervous about it, or are you kind of going over the game plan? What are you feeling?
Yeah, I was nervous. We both were. Mike had some late training season hamstring issues crop up, which again will be important later to this story. But we came home from that training ride, like the car ride home, it's about 8 hours. And the whole time we were like, okay, what are all the potential scenarios here? What if I don't make it? What if this? What if that? And at that point, you just have to say, look, did I do the best I could every day in training, right? Like, the best I could possibly do. If yes, then there's nothing else I can do right now.
Right, and there's no shame in it. There's really in an Ironman. There's no shame in a DNF at the end of the day. It's as long as you give it your best shot, there's really no shame at all. But like you said, you train hard. You're about as ready if you train hard, and you're not asking yourself, sometimes you got to have a couple days where you're like, all right, I missed that day, or I didn't do as much as I should have that day, but in the grand scheme of things, training is a big task. So if you miss a little bit here and there, it's not that much. If you feel content with your training going in, what else can you do?
Yeah, and we had a little bit of a complicated scenario in that we do a lot of traveling. So we were constantly like, oh, can I catch a spin class here? Like, what can I do there? And partway through the training, I lost my grandmother. So that was rough. And, you just every day wake up and like give it your best. And so that at the end of the day, it's like, well, I did what I can do. And that's like 8 months, right? It's like right. Devotion to a nutrition plan, right? It's not like, did you have cake one day? It's like, well, over the course of a week, how much vegetables did you eat,
Yeah. And what was I going to say? You, I don't know. I feel like, you mentioned that you travel a lot, and even like we just took this week and we went up to Ironman Maine to watch their 70.3, and Steph, my wife, and I, we ran Saturday morning, and then we went up and we watched the race on Sunday. So that was kind of like our day off, and now it's Monday, and I still got my training to do this afternoon, but I'm not really off schedule, but it feels like I am. It's been a long time, so it feels like forever since that run. So it's also mentally taxing when you go on trips and you do all this stuff, and all this stuff is hitting you. It's mentally taxing just to stay on point. But it feels like you felt like you did as best as you could. You didn't have any regrets really going into the race.
Yeah, no, I learned a lot during training, but that's like a learning curve that would happen the first Ironman for anyone, right? Like it's something you've never done before, so
it just gets worse and worse towards race day. It's just like anxiety and It's like an anxiety and excitement mixed with like am I really ready for this? Like a little bit of doubt and a little, So when I tell you what, and I'm hoping they did the same thing for you guys that they did for us at the half, which was when I showed up on race morning, and I had my wetsuit over my shoulder and I'm walking into the venue, and there was like a cavern of volunteers who just cheered like crazy and made you feel like a rock star when you walked in there. And I'm assuming it was such a great experience that I hope that they did it for you guys too. And it put you in like wow, these people are here for me, right?
Was on the road to the swim. So my parents came to Sherpa for us, and then my best friend Rachel came. So we had like 3 support people, and that was invaluable. Like I don't know how we could have done this without having like people there to support us and like sort of shepherd us around and like get our stuff, because we were both sort of in it in a way that you can only be in it in an Ironman weekend. So
especially when it's your first and you've never done it before, it's like, yeah.
Right. So we went down to the swim start. And we went and did, the Porta-John loop and whatever. And we came back, and there's this tunnel of volunteers cheering their heads off. And my dad's like, oh, that's just for the pros. And I was like, no, that's for everyone. My mom's like, oh, I think it's just like a parade for the new people. I was like, no, that's like. It's really
cool. And doesn't it just like, it kind of takes all those doubts that you kind of have in mind in the back of your head. And it's like, wow, these, it kind of like flips a switch and gets you in kind of a better frame of mind, I think. Going for not that your fear is removed, because then you're going on the beach.
Yeah.
And then it's anxiety, and then because of the way they do the start there with that whole machine that they let 6 people out at a time or whatever, they probably did the same way for you. It takes a while, and especially, the further you are back in line, the more the anxiety can build. It's like a 45-minute wait for you. The gun goes off. You're like, yay, race day. And then it's like 45 minutes later, you're like, I'm still not wet.
Yeah, the gun goes off. There's like fireworks.
Do they have the plane, the entire Canadian Air Force go over?
They planned it, but it was really foggy that morning, so they couldn't fly over. But luckily, we weren't delayed. So, we'll take our blessings.
Yeah.
So a fortunate thing for us, I mentioned a lot of people from our tri club were doing the race this year. So we were in the corral with a couple people, like friends from home who were doing it. So we just sort of like chitter chattered, and that made the time go by pretty quickly. Like, I can only imagine if you're there alone, you have nothing to do but stand there and get anxious. But it was kind of cool because we were talking with our friends, and then like other people would come and join the conversation because they were standing there and getting anxious. And soon it was just kind of like a community thing. And we weren't even talking about triathlons. We were just like anything to take your mind off what was about to happen to you.
Exactly. So, now what were your expectations for the swim going in? Cause I feel like, I'm trying to remember back to, so I was tracking you. I had about 7 people on my tracker, and I feel like you were one of the last people in the water. Were you kind of you wanted to kind of were you expecting to swim sort of back of the pack, or were you just was that kind of just the strategy to try to get some empty water and clear water?
I was pretty much expecting the swim to take me like 1:45, and I was going to be impressed if I did it faster. I think I did it a tiny bit faster, like 1:40 or so. But the swim was the thing I was the most anxious about, because I had friends tell me about like horrible experiences they had with people swimming over them and like getting pushed under or whatever. And I have a little bit of open water anxiety. I'm working through it, and I just did not want people to like disrespect my dance space. So I hung back a little bit where I knew that I would be with swimmers of sort of equal ability. And the great thing about the one loop swim at Tremblant is that the fast people don't catch the slow people.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say that. That's good.
When you find your swim space, you don't have to worry about like the scrum, except at the turn buoys. But like, okay, that's fine. You get body chucked a few times, but when you're wearing a wetsuit, you're basically a human boogie board. So
yeah. It's funny because I have been intimidated by the same talk that you're mentioning, and I had a friend of mine that lived in Lake Placid for years and would go down when the mass starts, and he used to say every time there's a race, people come out with broken fingers, broken toes, bloody noses, and I gotta knock on wood because now it's gonna happen to me in the next race, but I've never seen it. Maybe because they went to like that, the different start, the more structured, I forget what they call the rolling start. There's less accidents out there, but it's very intimidating to hear that talk, especially when you don't feel like you're a strong swimmer, and then to go out there and even having that experience in the half in the Olympic, it's still a little nerve-wracking going out in the crowd because you can't even practice that. There's no practicing that. No,
there really isn't. And I mean, like I said, we've done a couple 70.3s. So, I've been in the water with other bodies. We did Muskoka this year, and someone actually swam under me. And I close my eyes when I put my face in the water as like a way to alleviate my anxiety. It like keeps me calm. And I was reaching, for my pole, and my hand passed by neoprene. I was like, oh my God, is that a body? Oh my God, I found a body. And I was like, oh, it's a body, but it's fine.
Oh man. That's crazy. They, it's nerve wracking in a swim, especially, I think people talk about that as people show up at these races and they've never been in the open water before. It's like their first race and they'll jump in the open water and they'll freak out. It's just something that you really need to have a little bit of practice. But once you start getting it, I think even your next one, we're going to talk about that in a little while, but your next one, you're going to feel even more comfortable in the swim. So you get out and I actually pulled up your numbers here. So 142.49 for your swim, which is a little ahead of what you said. You said 145, right? You were hoping for one. So you're a little bit ahead of the game. You're probably feeling pretty good about that. And your transition was 10 minutes, which that's pretty good too. I mean, you're not messing around here. And so now you get on the bike. And now for me, these things are always, I look at Ironman races like it's like a bike ride surrounded by a little bit of a swim and a really, really long walk.
Yeah.
And it's about trying to survive that middle part. What were your feelings kind of getting out of the water, going up the ladder, They have the wetsuit strippers, right? And then you're off. How are you feeling at this point? I mean, you got to feel pretty good about your 142, and but now it's the bike. And
yeah, I'm pretty excited that I got out of the water as quickly as I did. And the wetsuit strippers were awesome, by the way. And then like I was able to run through transition, which I was happy with because it's kind of a longish transition.
It is, yeah. It's similar to Placid in that regard. Placid has like that little. It's like a 1/4 mile run.
Yeah, you have to like cross a road, like it's a long red carpet. So I get on the bike and I start going on the bike, and the first stretch of the bike at Tremblant is a stretch on the roads Mont-Tremblant, and Mont-Tremblant is like rolling hills all the way out to the highway. And again, every time I've done this stretch, I have a mini panic attack on Mont-Tremblant because everybody's like, oh, there's that big hill on 117. Oh, there's that big hill at the end in Duplessis. But nobody mentions that Mont-Tremblant actually has a really challenging set of hills, and you're just on the bike, so your legs aren't really warmed up yet,
Yeah.
So it feels, for me at least, it feels heart crushing. And I'm always like, I'm never going to make it. I'm such a terrible bicyclist.
Well, do you know what I think is a little bit crazy about those hills is that you kind of go down a big hill into it. Until at least one of them and I feel like that because you're on a downhill angle and you're looking up at the next hill going up, that it looks a lot steeper than it really is. And then I think you also pick up a good amount of speed going down that downhill, and you could pretty much get almost halfway up that hill just riding that speed from the downhill. And it's not, for me, it wasn't as bad. And maybe it's also only doing the loop once. So I, from a different perspective, once I got that over with, I felt like the other hills were harder. But not going back to that hill the second time. I mean, that's a totally different story.
Yeah, so you come out of town, there's a little downhill, and then you go basically around a rotary.
Yep.
And right out of the rotary, you go uphill. So you have to slow, or at least I have to slow down pretty significantly on the rotary. So you hit that uphill with like nothing, right? And that's where the soul crushing happens. And then once you get through that, you get the hill that you mentioned where you can kind of coast down and go up. But once I was through Mont-Tremblant and I was on 117, I was like, all right, here we are. And at that point, it became like the battle of the inner head demons, right? Like, you're never going to make it to the cutoff. Oh, but I have to try, right? So like, I'm going along. And they had a new, they weren't using Gatorade this year. They were using base.
Yeah.
And I had trained with base. So like I had some experience.
Lucky. It's very kind of salty. It was, I tried it, and there's some kind of like export issue with Gatorade in Canada.
Oh, why they did it?
Yeah, there's some kind of import-export. I don't know if it's like tariff related or not. I have no idea, but there's some kind of like, I think Gatorade is only sold in the United States for whatever reason. I don't know exactly what that is, but yeah, either that or they only send the powder. They can only send the powder and not the bottles or something like that. So they needed something else, and they wound up doing base. But that's one of those things where you probably looked it up in advance, I'm guessing, that there's going to be base on the course. So train with base. It's going to be on the course. It's going to be easier for you. If your body can handle it, that's great.
Yeah, and I'm gifted with an iron stomach, so I can do pretty much anything. But there has been so much moaning about the base on the Mont-Tremblant Facebook groups. Like, everybody is just whining about it. And I don't know, maybe it just doesn't work for a lot of people, or maybe it's just the outspoken majority who it doesn't work. Yeah. I don't know. But someone had mentioned, like, base has too much dextrose. That's going to make you poop. And so, of course, this was in my head, like, no matter what you do not poop,
Not on the bike, at least. I mean,
So, like, be careful with the base. It might be a problem. Like, even though I had trained with it, like, these stupid things that occur to you. So I'm on 117. I hit the turnaround. I come back. And on the turnaround of 117, I got passed by the men's leader, who was being followed by the whole camera crew.
Yeah, Lionel Sanders, I think, at that time. We talk about him on the podcast every once in a while.
Yeah, it was kind of a cool experience because I was like, I was hitting the turnaround, and I became aware that there was an athlete who was like cutting around me. And I was like, well, that's kind of like Am I allowed to curse on this podcast?
You can. As long as it's tactful and not like every other word.
All right, got it. I was like, what's kind of jerky? Like, why is this guy cutting my corner? And then I saw the like camera crews. I was like, oh, it must be the men's leader. And then someone pulled up next to me. He's like, oh, that's this famous triathlete. Triathlon's not quite my sport yet, so I'm not really up on like who these people are. So I was like, cool, ego check.
Now, I tell you, the one thing that I noticed when I was in Lake Placid and the men passed me the first year I did it was I just felt like their bikes make a different noise.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a whoosh.
Yes. I'm on a road bike, too. I ride a steel road bike because, that's what I ride. And road bikes, the shifter sounds drastically different from a tri-bike shifter.
Yeah.
And the tri-bike shifter has like a little pop, like... Yep. And the first time I heard that come up behind me, I freaked out because I didn't know what that was. Wasn't on this race. I've since gotten used to it, but it was like a horse spooking, like, yeah. So I make the turnaround and we go and like I hit the 117 hill. At this point, Mike and I are kind of leapfrogging each other. So I sort of have a sense of where he is. And the 117 hill, the side of the highway that they close for the race is not the side of the highway that you hit that hill on when on the training course.
Oh, okay. So on the is it easier?
Traffic. It is easier in the race. So when we had
it's easier in the race.
Yes.
Oh, good for you. That's good.
When we had hit it in training, we were freaked out about it because we were like, oh my God, this hill's so terrible. So we like immediately went and found the most terrible hill we could find, which is hard in Buffalo, by the way. There's like no hills north of the city. You have to go south to find them. And rode it a bunch of times so that when I got to that 117 hill, I was like, this is not so bad. What am I thinking? Right. Yeah. So sort of at the back of my mind, I've had this demon floating there the whole race. Like, you might not make the cutoff. And I'm like, all right. Every time that happened, I would sort of acknowledge it and be like, can we move on from this thought? Like, think about literally anything else. Like, maybe think about like the day you ran the New York City Marathon, like the best day ever, right?
Right. That's good. I like that. So see, like my thing is always just, I deal with that this way is I always say, shut up, just keep going until they tell you that you can't go anymore and they make you stop.
That eventually became my thought on the run. But for the bike, I was like, we just got to keep feeding in some other thought. Like it doesn't matter if you're having a good day or a bad day at this point. Just
I like the positive spin to that, though. There's more like to think of something when you had like a very successful day, and let that drive you. I kind of like that better than mine's a little defeatist.
Don't think about pink elephants, right? Like if you tell yourself don't think about it, that's what you're going to think about. But you can also introduce the notion of any other thought, So
when is it? Go ahead.
So, it helps if you have like a predetermined list of thoughts to think of.
I like that too. Yeah, I've used that in like my race prep.
Yeah. Because that's when you need to use it. It's practice like anything else. You train your body, but you're training your mind too. And if you don't train your mind to think of something positive when you're really in the pain cave, then you're going to go right into the dark place and you will never emerge.
Yeah. And I tell you, some of those hills, like the hills that you meant, the difficult hills, sometimes you feel like you give every ounce that you have to those hills and that once you climb them, you're just going to be done for the day and cooked. But then, if you get that little roller on the other side and you can just take a few minutes to kind of get your energy back. Lake Placid is very unforgiving on the back end because it's just all up. But I feel there's a lot of rollers in Mont-Tremblant, so it's a lot of up and down and up and down. And if you can just get over that one up, and then as you go back down, you can kind of gather a little bit of energy for the next one. It's kind of like a weird feeling out there.
Yeah, that's the great part about being an Athena athlete is that I weigh more than most other people on the course, and physics is my friend.
On the downhills, right?
The downhills, I could really get some speed going.
I have to tell you, this was a comment that I made yesterday when I watched Ironman Maine 70.3, because I've never really watched a race before from the sidelines, and I am totally guilty of looking at other people and judging them based on how they look and how I expect them to perform. And after watching yesterday's race, I say this not as a negative thing, but I am just amazed at the performances of people who, who weigh more than you look at them and you say, how is this person doing it? It's like, I have to put away all my excuses when I see other people doing it. And knowing that I weigh 220, 225, and I'm like, and I use that as an excuse. Meanwhile, this person weighs, more than me, and they're finishing in times that are beating, people that weigh 180. So it's like, it's not an excuse really. I got to stop using that excuse. And, but yeah, the downhills are definitely my friend too.
Yeah. I think it's my greatest asset really. Like I'm a much stronger athlete than I bet side by side, I'm willing to wager that I could outlift any other woman on that field.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's a great feeling too. It's a little confidence. It's like, especially in cycling, when you're conquering those hills, it's like, you can squat more than 90% of the field out there. So, that's what it takes. That's what it takes. So let me ask you, so you're on the bike and now it seems like early on in the process, you're questioning whether or not you're going to make that. It's a 5:30 p.m. cutoff, I believe. At least that's what it was in Placid. I think it is there too. So was it when did it become like a really big reality for you? Like, did you have to kind of like, as you're finishing the bike, obviously going up and down that last out and back that I struggled so much with. I had to walk up a little bit. Like, what's going through your head? I mean, did you know how close you were? Because I'm looking here at I think you made it at 5:22 p.m. or something like that. So not a lot of cushion. I was 5:16, and I know I had a lot of anxiety over making that time. When did it kind of hit you? Like, you're really cutting it? Was it really, did you know like early on in the race that you were going to be cutting it close, or what were you feeling kind of like the last 10 miles?
Well, I knew the whole time it would be close. Mont-Tremblant has a mercy cutoff at the base of Duplessis. They'll cut you off there at, I think it's 4:20, 4:30, something like that. It's like an hour before the actual cutoff. So if you're really behind, you won't have to climb that hill. When I made it to the turnaround on 117, I looked at my watch, I did some math, and I was like, holy shit, I might actually make this.
Nice.
So I turned around and I started coming back and then like climbed that 117 hill, and I was in so much pain. I knew I needed to cry, but I wasn't injured and I didn't want to alarm anybody. So I had to find a place where there weren't any volunteers or like anybody on the road to see me, because I didn't want them to think like, oh, this person needs help. I'm like, yes, I do, but like mentally, not like between my ears. That's what's hurting right now. And eventually found like a spot, and I was like, all right, this is your chance. Just like let it out. So I had a nice ugly cry and like wailing aloud to myself, I never want to do this again. This is awful. I want to go home. I hate this. And I was like, all right, look.
That's great. It's great and not great at the same time.
I was like, look, you can stop fighting now if you want. If you really want, you can stop. But you know how that story ends, right?
It's called register for next year's race. You got to be out here and do it again.
If you get off the bike right now, you know what's going to happen. But you don't know what's going to happen if you keep fighting. And then I sort of got it together and made my way back. And I made the cutoff at the base of Duplessis. And Mike and I had done the math based on our training rides. We're like, if you make that cutoff at the base, as long as you can keep a good clip, you're going to get in under and you're golden. So I made the cutoff and I was like, oh my God. And I said aloud to myself, just get your ass up and down that mountain.
Yeah. And, in a good way, once you get up it, it's really, it's obviously coming down a lot easier, but so it's like, if you can kind of trick yourself to think, all right, I don't remember how you said it was 8K. Is that what you said it was?
8K up. Yeah.
So if you can say to yourself, all right, really it's 4K.
Right.
Right.
So it's actually 8K base to tip. So
okay.
Really,
all right. So it's 8K. All right. So it's not 16K. Let's say it's
right,
half of that. So if you kind of trick yourself mentally, there's little things you do to like make it sound, it's because once you get to the top and you turn around, I think there might be like one or two spots where you actually have to exert to kind of get up.
Yeah. It's the hit that keeps on giving, on the way back.
But it's like you kind of like you can breathe out, right?
Yeah. So I got up the hill. Well, I started up the hill. and I had to walk it for the last 2 bumps. But at that point, I was power walking faster than I was spinning. So I was like, all right, just keep moving. And I usually when I get off my bike, I unclip my right foot, put it down, and then I unclip and move my leg over.
Yep.
Here's how dead I was inside. I was like, I realized, okay, I'm going to have to unclip. And I'm still a little anxious about unclipping because 18 months.
Right. No, I mean, trust me, I hear you. I've done some really stupid fall over with my clips in.
Everyone has, right? That's just the big, and you just hope there's no traffic on the road.
And no one looking.
Yeah. And so I unclipped my foot and threw it over the bike as it was still going. And like my foot is hovering over the bike. I'm like, God, I hope this works out. It did.
Oh, all right. Ooh, you're still here.
I looked pretty cool. But I was like, this could end terribly.
Yeah, that would have been a terrible way to end the race. It could end the podcast for that matter.
I don't know if we would be talking, actually. Yeah. So I power walked it up, and I got to the turnaround point, and I was like, all right, you just got to get down the hill. So I got down the hill, and I was half thinking, like, oh, my God, what if I don't make it? You know, the math says I should, but what if I don't? I was halfway thinking they were going to stop me before I hit transition. Yeah. But they didn't. They waved me forward, and someone caught my bike, and I was like, all right, we're in this.
That's great.
That's like the crazy part about an Ironman. You're like, we just have to run a marathon now. Like, never in my life
and I got to tell you, our stories are so alike in that regard, because I felt like the same exact way. Because you're probably, if you're like me, I mean, like your entire race is that out and back at this point. Like, that's it. You know, so your day is over if you don't give it all you have. And then once you give it all you have and you get in, now it's like, oh yeah, marathon.
Right. No big deal, right? I did this in training, and mentally I had already broken the race up into 4 10Ks because Tremblant is a 2-loop course. It's an out and back, kind of, mostly an out and back. So I'm like, all right, 10K out, 10K back. Then I pick up my special needs bag, and then it's just 10K out and 10K back, and that's no big deal, right? And the course is marked in kilometers because you're in Canada, so
right, which throws you off a little bit. But at least for your 10K theory, your strategy, that seems to work pretty well. Yeah. So great. So I get into the transition tent, and I'm like, I don't know how much time I have. I know transition's going to close, but I'm like, all right, I just got to go as fast as I can. You know, and I'm obviously one of the last few people in there. So I'm like taking up like 4 chairs with my stuff. You might as well. I did the same thing, right? You just
putting stuff on, pulling stuff off. This angel of a volunteer comes over and like ties my shoes for me and like repacks my bag. She's like, just go. By the way, your transition, 5 minutes and 30 seconds. That's pretty good. Good. You know, the key was I took my cleats off after the dismount line.
Yeah. And then you don't want to walk in those. Yeah, you don't want to walk in those.
No, and I hustled. And so, and like I'm saying, this volunteer repacked my bag for me after I left. So like I had help.
Yeah.
And
that's their job. That's a good thing that they do. It's easier when there's no one there. And you trust me, I've been there, and it's like, there's like 3 volunteers helping you out. Yeah. Because there's no one else in the tent.
She was an angel, and I wish I had caught her name, or like my favorite volunteer bracelet. So I was wearing 2 Garmins because I knew my Garmin wouldn't last the whole race, and that I was going to be close. So a friend loaned me their old Garmin. So I had her Garmin on one wrist and my Garmin on another wrist. And I like used hers for the bike. I had this whole strategy, and my favorite volunteer bracelet was stuck under the big Garmin on my wrist. So I couldn't get it off to give to this volunteer. So she had like, her arm was covered in them. So I didn't feel too bad, but anyway, if you're out there, Angel Volunteer, thank you so much. So I get out on the run, and I'm like, all right, this is what you do. You know how to run. You can run this race. Just go. And I use Galloway intervals.
Sure. We had Jeff on the podcast actually a few months ago.
He is so kind.
Yeah. And he's, what's funny is like I hadn't ever talked to him before, and all I knew him was from Galloway Method, and I kind of watched a TED Talk, and I'm like, wow, this guy's he's really smart.
Yeah, and he's like the nicest person
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah, and he like reached out to me after. He's like, if ever anything you need or anything I can do for you, and it's that's nice. Mike Reilly was the same way actually, and you got Mike Reilly, but let's not talk about that yet.
We'll get to Mike Reilly. I promise we'll get to Mike Reilly. I have to send him an email actually, but anyway. So I'm running my intervals, and I knew there were some rolling hills, so I'm trying to open it up on the downhills, and about 1 kilometer in, I start having some GI issues. I don't know. I'm just gonna say that
Iron stomach. What happened to iron stomach?
I know, it's the first time I've ever had GI issues on a race ever in my history of endurance athletics. And I the only explanation I have for it is like Ironman makes you do weird shit, like sometimes literally.
How many 17-hour training days did you do?
Right, exactly.
You know?
I did exactly 0 17-hour training days. My longest was 12 hours, and that was long.
That's pretty good.
So I'm trying my best, but in the back of my head, I'm like, this is not feeling good. I'm feeling like death warmed over, and I'm like, all right.
Now this is the start of the run?
Yeah, this is like 3 to 5K in, and I'm like, all right, drink the broth. Everybody says drink the broth, drink the broth. So I drink the broth. And I drink the water, and I like try and feed myself. And this is a big mistake. This is one of the few mistakes I made. Do not pack the same fuel for the run that you have for the bike.
Okay. Because?
Palate fatigue is real.
Yeah, I think you're right. I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do real food when I
do the bike?
For bike run, I just do real food. So I've been using for the bike mochi. Do you know mochi?
Not that little ice cream, the Japanese ice cream.
Okay, yes.
That would melt. Those are awesome.
Right. It's not ice cream. You make it with bean paste in the middle instead of ice cream.
Uh-huh.
So it's just like rice paste with bean paste in the middle. It's perfect. It's like 1 bite on the bike. I do a little bit of salt, a little bit of potassium salt on it, and I Ziploc baggie it. And it's great because, bam, calories.
There you go.
I should have packed more salty stuff for the run. I had like a bag of Goldfish in my pocket and a bunch of other stuff, but I was planning on using on-course nutrition because I've done like bananas and stuff, no problem. But I just did not want sweet things. I wanted salty things.
It's so, you know what? It's very hard to replicate what you're going to be feeling on that run. And I tell you, I always run and do my long runs with gels and goo gels, and it's fine for me if I'm just running. But after an Ironman, the last thing I want to eat on that run course is a goo gel. And I always have them with me. I never, ever use them. I found I really like grapes.
Oh, that's a good idea. Like frozen grapes too.
Usually they have them at the Ironman court, like as part of their, part of the food. Yeah, it's kind of weird because some of the tables will just have them out in like a tray tin, and you got to wonder where everyone's hands going into that. But some of them will put them in individual cups and stuff like that, and I'll take the cups. And at that point, it really doesn't matter whose hand's been in it or hasn't been in it. You don't really care. You want what you want.
The first time I had Goldfish on a run was at the Marine Corps Marathon a couple years ago, and some just like random human, not a run official, just like a spectator, was there with one of those big aluminum trays of Goldfish, not segregated, just like and I was like, oh, that looks so good. And she's at like, she was in Crystal City, so she was at like mile 21. So by that point, like, yes. And I reached my fist in, and as I'm closing my fist around this like open tray of Goldfish, I'm like, this is the worst idea I've ever had.
I can tell you stories of things I've seen on marathons that'll make you cringe about that stuff. But you know what? You can't at that point. You have time to get sick on that stuff later.
Right. But it was mile 21. I ate it. It was great. And now I eat Goldfish during my runs. 2 thumbs up. Highly recommend.
It's kind of weird. And you know what? I think it just goes to show that everyone is especially when it comes to nutrition, everyone's kind of a little bit different. And I think the way you kind of hone it in is just trying as many, in training, trying as many different combinations until you find something that's good for you. And Goldfish seems to be a winner for you. But was Goldfish the thing on Ironman Day, or is it?
On Ironman Day, I did have a bag full of Goldfish, but my mistake was I didn't have enough for all of my feedings. I had packed like mochi, and I had some cookies in my pocket, and I had like a honey stinger waffle, like stuff that I usually use during a run, but it was all sweet except for that one bag of Goldfish. Yeah. So I didn't want to eat my fuel because I was like, oh God, I can't do more sweet stuff. So I think that was part of my problem, to be honest. I just needed more fuel and I couldn't get in the things I wanted to get in.
All right. So I think we have now we already have this major finish that we have to get to, but now there's like a story in between that obviously there's going to be some kind of event here. It's going to go one way or the other.
Right. So I start slowing down because I just can't run anymore. Like I hit like the 8K mark and I start walking and I can't get it together to run anymore. And it's so hot and I'm so tired and I feel like death warmed over. So I start power walking, and at the back of my head, I'm like, I know how fast I walk. I know what the splits need to be for this race. I don't think I'm going to make it, but I'm not like, you're in a bike path in the middle of the woods. What are you going to do? Sit on the corner of the bike path? Like one way or another, you have to make it back to town. So I was like, I'm just going to keep going if I can. But that's when my splits start to really slow down.
Yeah.
And then I hit a portal lot and I'm like, I really have to pee. And if I'm not going to make it anyway, I might as well be comfortable. So I go do what I need to do. And I'm standing in the lot trying to get, sweaty clothes back on sweaty self. Yeah. And the world just goes, woo, 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 right? And I was like, this is not good. I don't want to end my Ironman season in a portal lot. I better leave. And then I leave and I I had little hand sanitizer wipes, so I wipe off my hands and I'm like, all right, what's the problem? I had to pee, so clearly I'm hydrated, right? Like I'm good there. I've been drinking the broth at every station, so my salt levels are probably fine. And I had taken the base guys had salt licks, so I had taken a lick, and I've trained with base before, so I knew that would be fine. And the salt still tasted salty. So I'm like, all right, my salt levels were fine. What's going on? And that's when I remembered the Goldfish. And I was like, all right, I know you don't want to eat anything, but just maybe try the Goldfish. And I opened the feed bag and 1 minute there was Goldfish and the next minute there was not. And I was like, oh, I guess I was hungry.
All right.
So things did not pick up from there. I knew that my family would be waiting for me basically on the way back into town. And I also knew on Tremblant, you don't get your special needs bags back.
Right. And that's tough. And the same thing in Placid this year, which was different because usually you do. And they did say that you could go get it, but I think it was more like some kind of insurance issue. Like they don't want to be responsible if you lose something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's fine because they told us well in advance. We knew that whatever we put in there was either going to get picked up by us or tossed. But I was like, if I make it to the run, I'm going to make it to special needs because I've run so many marathons, it's going to be fine. So I put this long sleeve shirt that I kind of liked in that bag. And I was like, all right, no one's going to think less of you if you pull out. You'll be fine. Just make it to the special needs bag, get your shirt, and then you can stop.
Okay. But that, mentally, that's kind of like a decent, because it gets your mind off of doing anything further than that.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
Now you have a goal.
I do have a goal. I was fully convinced that I was going to pull myself off the course. I was like, I don't know if I have this in me. I hurt so badly. And I started thinking okay, you're supposed to think of your why in these moments. Why are you doing this? And I
have no idea.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. I'm doing this because Mike wanted to do an Ironman, but by that point, it had become clear to me that he hadn't made the bike cutoff.
What?
Yeah, he missed it by 5 minutes.
Oh, man.
And he didn't even he made the Mercy cutoff at the base of Duplessis, but he was the last guy they let up, and then he had some hamstring cramping, and then his chain skipped.
Man. But did you see him on the way down?
I didn't see, so I saw him on the way down, but I knew he was a bit behind me. And as I was leaving T2, I heard them say 4 minutes till transition closes. And I'm like, he is more than 4 minutes behind me.
Oh, man.
Not take it.
So you mentioned before, you're like, he's going to come in the story later. And my assumption was, all right, he finishes and then he kind of gathers himself and goes back out and cheers you on. But no, that's like a sad change of the story.
Well, hang on. So I'm convinced that I'm going to pull myself out of this race. And I make it back to town. And who is standing on the corner but my husband And I'm like, oh my God, there he is. He took a shower, he stretched, and I was like, please come walk with me. And he's like, okay. Cause like at this point, we're so far back in the pack that like,
no one cares. Yeah. No one cares. And it should be.
Yeah. So he comes and he takes my hand and he's like, okay. Like, I don't even tell him what's going on. He's like, okay, you can do this. You have enough time. Here's what you have to do. And I was like, hun, cause there's a 32-kilometer cutoff at, Tremblant, and it's at 10:30 PM. And I was like, I am feeling so shitty, so terrible. I don't think I'm going to make this 10:30 cutoff. And I don't know what to do. And I tell him about the whole world going wobbly. He's like, well, how do you feel right now? And I'm like, actually, I feel fine. And he's like, has it been wobbly since? I was like, no, I strapped the feed bag on and I've been fine. He's like, how's your hydration? I'm like, it's fine. Just running down the checklists.
Yeah.
And I'm like, right, I'm actually okay. And he's like, here's the math. You have to go like the 40K, sorry, the 20K mat is right up there. You're about to cross it. So you need to go 12 kilometers in an hour and 40 minutes. And I started to do the math on my 10K time. And I was like, you know what? That's actually very doable.
So,
I think I can do that.
So that was your goal, and to get to that 10:30 mat, the 10:30 PM cutoff.
And then, like, by the time he sort of dropped off when I got to the base, because you have to do that climb to turn the corner to get into the.
Yeah.
He dropped off when I got to the base of that climb, but when he left me, I was running again, and I was like, okay, so I will go until either they stop me. I will go until they stop me. Like, either they're going to stop me at that 10:30 cutoff, or medical's going to.
Right, you'll wake up tomorrow morning in the hospital.
Right. So I can do that. Okay, so that's what I have to do.
Incidentally, you see what you're doing here, and this is kind of like you set your goal for that the special needs, and then you reset it again once you got there for the next. You set these intermediate goals for yourself, probably without even knowing, or maybe you did it with knowing, but. It seems like that was important for you.
Yeah, and it always is, but I can't overstate. I think that's why I like the Marine Corps Marathon so much, because there's like goals built into that race.
Yeah,
because they have like intermediary cutoffs at the various
bridge.
Yeah. But and same thing with the New York City Marathon. You go through all the boroughs, and you're like, I'm getting to this borough, and. Anyway, the bottom line is it's always important, but my mind was so fried at this point that I couldn't do it consciously. I had to have like the external forces do it for me. So I turn the corner at the top of the hill and I start running through the village of Tremblant, which took me right back to Brooklyn. Like it is an experience. I'm not going to say unlike any other, because run the New York City Marathon and that's what it's like. But like the chute is narrower and it's lined with spectators and everybody's cheering for you.
So
and
they bring they bring you through there at the midway point too?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So you get a little boost.
Oh, all right.
So you run through the village and then it splits. You go left for the finish line or right for your second lap. And like I say, that's the hardest decision of your day, right?
Yeah. Well, especially when at that point in time, and trust me, I'm there, and Lake Placid is similar. It's like, you feel like there are more people going the other way than going back out. Like everyone's like, cheering people. You hear Mike Reilly talking and bringing people in, and you got to go back out.
Yeah. And you can hear at Tremblant, you can hear Mike Reilly from 3 miles away.
Yeah.
Cause he's across the lake. So you just hear the finish line. So, and everybody's cheering and you don't want to disappoint them. And you're like, sorry guys, I'm going right. Got to go back out. So I take the right turn. Special needs is there. There's this charming man who offers me a chair and I say, nope, can't sit down. If I sit down, I won't get back up. I get my shirt. I had put mercifully another bag of Goldfish in my special needs bag. Grab my Goldfish, grab what I need, and I take off. And I start going. And I'm doing pretty good. And I'm sticking to my 90-30 Galloway intervals, power walking when I have to. And I pass a couple people on the course who are doing the same thing I'm doing, like just trying to stick it out. And I pass this one guy who's like, do you think they're going to let us finish? And I was like, I'm going to keep going until they tell me to stop.
Yeah.
And if you look at if you look at pictures of me during the run, I'm wearing a singlet that says "Nevertheless, she persisted." So like every time, usually a woman sees me, they like give me the 2 thumbs up and like get really excited for me, and that was pretty cool. So I hit the bike path and I'm going pretty good, and I'm like, all right, I'm counting down to that cutoff, that 32 kilometer cutoff, and I'm like 3 kilometers out, and this guy on a bike catches up with me, one of the service guys, and he says in very thick French accent, like, "Do you want to finish?" And I said, "Yes." Because at this point, I'm 10 kilometers away from the finish line. Like, of course I want to finish. And he's like, "There is a 10:30 p.m. cutoff, and it's however 3 kilometers ahead or whatever, and you have X amount of time." And I was like, okay. So I start going, and I was like, here's the plan, 90-30. I explained the whole thing to him. He's like, all right, you're going to have to go faster than that. And I'm like, okay, I will try. If you look at my 20-mile split, it's like 11 minutes and something seconds.
I was just looking at that when you were telling the story, and I'm like, which is also kilometers per hour, right? It's not mile per hour.
But still, like, look at the time on all of my other splits.
It looks slow.
The 11 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, no, it looks like, so I'm seeing, all right, hold on. At the 20 kilometer, I see 11:21. That was your slow one. And then
there's no 20 mile 20.
So that's like, I don't know. I can't do that math. But I do see it. I see it at the 30.2 kilometer mark. I see a 10:48 mile.
There it is. Yes. That is like a PR that deep in the race for me. Like, it is ridiculous. I had to.
But this is nothing. So I want to tell you, this is where I'm looking at your splits and I'm saying to myself, because I'm tracking you, and it says your expected finish time is 12:16 a.m. And I'm thinking there is no way this person's going to be able, and like I said, we didn't follow you or track your training. So I don't know what you're made of. I don't know, I don't know what's deep, what you got buried under there. But obviously it's something because, somewhere around, I remember I put something on the page and said, because it wasn't even that mile. It was the tracking after the one after it. So I don't want to take your story. I don't want to steal your story. I want you to tell a story. Because after 10:48, that 10:48, pace, what the hell happens?
So this guy on the bike coaches me through to the cutoff, and at this point I'm sprinting. I have to sprint to make it, but I make it with like no time to spare. Like, it's 10:30. I hit the mat. I am the last person across that cutoff. And I start to develop an entourage. There are 6 guys on bikes with me, and the sag wagon is behind me.
Yeah.
So, picture, if you will, a remote bike path in the wilds of Canada with, like, me doing my little run-walk intervals, and 6 guys on bikes encouraging me in various forms of French and English. I do speak some French, but that deep in the race, it's a marvel I speak English. And like the wagon behind them. And at this point, a race official sort of catches up with me. It's not that hard because I think, in my head, I'm like the cheetah, but like actually I'm, lumbering along. And she's like, "Madam," they say madam because they're French. "Madam, your projected finish time is about 12:20 right now, but if you keep going at the pace you're going, we're going to let you finish. So don't slow down." And at that point I had in my head, I was like, look, I'm going to finish this out until my watch clicks over to 26.2 one way or another. Cause like in my head, that's all I needed. Right. Like you can't tell me I'm not an Ironman if I do the
Oh yeah. You gotta, you're going to convince yourself. Right.
I'm like, yeah, okay. Even if Mike Reilly goes home for the night, like I'm still going to finish this thing. And it'll be fine. But at that point, it becomes clear, like, oh, like, I might actually make it. Yeah. And so I start going. Mike has been tracking me and knows that I'm struggling because he's watching me. And he's like, crap, she might make it, but it looks like she needs a boost. So my husband, who's just done, a 2.4 mile swim and a 112 mile bike in which his hamstrings cramped up and he, like, literally fell off the bike in transition, comes running out to get me, runs back like 3 miles, and sees this like giant entourage. And he's like, well then. And I'm like, hey, honey, here's the guys. Meet them. They're awesome. And like, we're talking. And like, one of the ones says to me, one of the guys on the bikes is like, hey, we're your posse. And I'm like, yeah, we're like the Avengers. And he's like, then I'm Thor. And I was like, then I'm Captain America. So, because, you know, I'm American. It's funny.
Right. It was good.
So Mike's there. He's encouraging me. He's checking his watch. My watch has died at this point. And he's like, you got to pick it up. And I was like, I've got nothing left. He's like, you have to pick it up. And I was like, I don't think you understand the words coming out of my mouth. I can't. If you push me, I'm just going to cry. He's like, I was like, I don't care if I make it. He was like, you are going to care. Just trust me. You are going to care. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, there's no way. Like, I'm in so much pain. I can't. I don't have anything to lay down anymore, right? Like, we're gonna go with the speed we go.
Well, and let me tell you, there's a glimmer of hope here at like 36 kilometers, because you run over a timing mat, and your pace goes from 10:48 to 7:56.
Yeah. And
all of a sudden, it was like, I remember that's when I posted on Facebook. I was like, oh my God, like, this is strange. So I'm assuming that's right around this time.
Yeah, when the guys caught up with me. So the other thing these guys did was they like were loudly shouting my name, and everybody on the sidewalk would like take up the shout. So like as we went through these towns, there were people drinking on the, everybody was like shouting my name and like bells and everything. It was insane. Like the kind of thing you wake up the next morning, you're like, did that actually
was that me? Right.
Right. To top things off, one of the support vehicle guys, there's a picture of him. So I swear to God, looks like Santa Claus. So like, there's Santa Claus on the bike behind me telling me to keep going. And like, it's just insane. And then we get
so
to
how can you stop? You can't stop, right? You can't. It's impossible.
Point,
and some hills there too. There's not.
Yes. And I was very clear. I was like, I'm going to power walk up the hills. I will run down them. But like, I just don't think. And they were like, all right, do what you got to do. And like, we picked up a support guy who was, who had been volunteering the day at a local Spartan race. So he came and ran with me. And the guys with me on bikes, like, shout out to them. They were off-duty doctors, off-duty cops. Like, they were incredible. And they just made sure that I kept going. They were not going to let me quit. And so we finally get to the base of the last hill, and Mike peels off because he's like, I'm going to go wait for you at the finish line. I'm like, okay, that sounds like a good idea. Like, at this point, it's clear that I'm going to make it,
Yeah. So you when did that moment come? Because for me, I was like, I was probably about a mile out when I knew I'd make it, but I didn't know what my time was going to be. I wasn't really concerned about the time at that moment.
Yeah. I would say about 5K out, I was like, I'm going to make the end of 26.2 on my watch.
Yep.
I don't know if it'll be less than 17 hours, but I'm going to be an Ironman, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But we hit the base of that hill, and I start running up, and Santa Claus is like, up ahead, there are angels waiting for you. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's fine, Santa Claus. Thanks for telling me. And then I look up, and there are 3 people dressed all in white with angel wings.
That's
apparently,
awesome.
In Tremblant, this is what they do. They send out angels to run the last finisher in, and they ran the last 2K with me like the whole way. You can do it! Go, 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 go!
That is awesome.
It was, like I said, I'm so glad that there were other people there to witness this and that this evidence. Because I like woke up the next morning like, I am having trouble.
So, all right. So listen, you hit this top of the hill, and you got the 3 angels with you. Like, what? I mean, it has to transfer from like, all right, I'm going to make this, to like some kind of euphoric, you've got this. It's like, and then, I mean, can you take me through that, like the downhill when you come through the town and as you approach the finish line? Like, how are you handling that moment?
So I turn the corner to the finish line and I start running down through town, and there are people everywhere and they are going nuts. Like, if you've never been to an Ironman finish at midnight, this is an experience you should have. And like, being in the middle of it was so surreal. I was so tired and so exhausted and so in pain that I was like, you need to take this in. Like, this is singular. This is never gonna. But I was also in the zone. I was like, I have to sprint because I don't know where the finish. Like, I didn't know where the mat was.
Yeah.
So I just knew like I had to get over that mat. So I start running, and people are screaming and high fives and everything's happening and like air horns, and I turn a corner and I see the finish line and it says 16:59:12. And I'm like, I need to go. So I like find some like small corner of my heart and I take off like a shot, and Mike Reilly is there. I didn't even hear him. Like, that's where I was in the adrenaline zone. Like, I start crying, but also laughing. The pictures of me at the finish line, I've got like this giant, my mouth is open, my arms are up over my head, I've got this like giant grin on my face, and I run past the finish line. I had to watch the video to confirm this, but I do manage to high five Mike Reilly.
Yeah, I think I noticed that. Yeah. And then you kind of ran through and you were just like, you just kind of took in the moment. It looked like you kind of stopped and you're just like, they like let you stand there and enjoy it. Yeah.
I ran through the finish line and I was like hoping I would be able to thank Mike Reilly, but he doesn't cross the finish line. Right. He stays on one side, which I actually respect. But that meant that I was like, oh shit, like I had things I wanted to tell you.
We can get those to him, by the way.
Yes, I would love to. I crossed the finish line, and there's, on the video, you see that I take a knee because like I just need a minute.
Yeah.
Because like my heart's beating so fast and like adrenaline, and then I get back up and I'm like, holy shit, that just happened. Like, I don't know what to think. Like, I'm crying and smiling at the same time, and I'm like, oh, and I'm like, no, you need to make sure you get your finisher picture. So like, look up at the camera, don't look down. Like, and Mike is there. He later told me he just sort of like pushed his way through, like, that's my wife. So he was past the finisher chute. So like I have a minute just to like, oh, and then they're counting down, and I go over and hug my husband, and we're both crying. And then the catcher gets me and sort of like walks me over, and I get my chocolate milk, my medal, obviously, and my hat and my shirt. And I go back to the tent, and I'm just like blinking because it's really surreal. Did you have an out-of-body experience? Because I swear that was an out-of-body experience.
Here comes Danielle Rosvally. Danielle Rosvally, finishing your first Ironman. She was our last official finisher. We got them all in. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 7.
I don't know how to explain it. I really don't. It's like, it's a euphoric kind of like, and mind you, by the way, something very strange is that you and I have the same exact finishing time to the second.
I know, we're Ironman twins.
It's 17 hours, 0 minutes, 58 seconds to the second, which is insane. And I mean, what a coincidence. Amazing. And but yeah, like for me, I think, that I did that for a different reason, right? So this was like my third Ironman finish that I was kind of doing really for my daughter. So I had like a different kind of spin on it, and it was my thoughts were always with her throughout the entire time. So it was more like, I earned that moment to then, like when you say you're talking about going and seeing your husband, like I earned that moment to go and see my daughter. You know what I mean? Like, and that, so it was just, and I, I remember asking what my time was. And when they told me it was over 17 hours, I didn't even care because I felt like, you know what? You weren't getting any more seconds out of me that day. That was everything I had. Yeah. And I'm assuming same for you.
So like a cool thing about this was because I was the last finisher, people have been posting videos. It's kind of slowed down now, but like the week after, people were posting like videos and pictures of me finishing. So I have this like really cool collection of people documenting this moment. And then somebody posted a picture. So we had team shirts made for our support crew. And again, I have to emphasize that like having them there was it just made the race possible. Like my mom, my dad, my best friend, Rachel, like they really made it possible for us to be there and they were cheering for us. And it was just incredible to have them there. But we made them support crew shirts and they had like team names on the back. Yeah. So like, I'm She Bear, Mike's He Bear. My dad said Papa Bear. Somebody on the Facebook group posted this story about Papa Bear and how like he witnessed this magical moment where this guy wearing this Papa Bear shirt was waiting for his daughter and was worried about his daughter who was still out on the course. And he like documents this whole story about how my dad goes through this emotional journey watching me finish and then like bursts into tears when I come around the corner. And I was like, I don't know, I'm sort of getting emotional thinking about it. But it's just been really cool to like see things like that and just stuff pop up. So you can't plan that stuff, right? Like I didn't start this race planning to be the DLF. I didn't like plan to have a breakdown on the bike course. I didn't plan to have a terrible run. It's just what happened. And it was so magical and so incredible. And I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. And even though I don't have a finisher certificate because they technically say that I was a DNF because I was over 17 hours. Yeah. Right. You're going to take away that finish from me.
No, like you can't take away the you know what? And, I hate to plug my own podcast, but if you listen, I didn't mean to do this with Mike Reilly. I had him on the podcast and I asked him about the same exact scenario because it always like kind of like didn't make sense to me, like why they do that. And he says a lot of it's just because of safety, because the way they have to do the staggered start in the swim now, they do that for safety and it's our safety. And frankly, I think that staggered start is necessary. Yeah. It's so much safer being in the swim just for exactly what we talked about in the beginning. And you think about it, if it was a mass start, all the slow swimmers would run up to the front and then it'd be even worse. And and then yet the magic, like you said, everyone should go and watch the finish of an Ironman at midnight because that's the magic of the event. And it's not when you think that it'd be when the winners come through, but there's like no one there when the winner, no one cares. The magic is at midnight when it's the people, the everyday people that train for this on their own, that have careers, that have families, and they train for this on their own. And they, for whatever reason, maybe had a rough day, or maybe this is just that's what you're capable of on that day. And you go through things that, they test you when you're about to quit and you have to go through those thoughts. All right, I'll just get here and then I'll quit. And I'll just get here. Okay. I'll just go a little further. Then I'll quit. I'll just go. And somehow you made it through, somehow you made it through. And there's a magic about that. And to take away that magic by then calling you a DNF, there's a certain, I don't know. It doesn't sit right with me. And I don't think it sits right with Mike either. But on the other hand, you can kind of understand that Ironman kind of has to have these rules. And if they didn't have them, then people would be, moving up on the swim and it would be dangerous. And I get that. But what Reilly said, and I don't, who am I to argue with him? The man who's probably seen more Ironman races than anybody else. And he said, when you come through, I call you what I think you are. And if you're a couple minutes or a couple seconds after that, so be it. So what? It's the day and you're an Ironman in his eyes. So if he calls you an Ironman, if he calls me an Ironman, I say you are one.
I agree. I don't, and here's the irony of all this. I've done many races in the past where there's been finisher certificates. I have never once downloaded one.
And you went to do this one and
but somehow I went to go do this. I was like, hey, wait a minute.
You know what's funny is like I noticed because I looked at your tracker and my tracker said did not finish on the bottom and yours doesn't. It still doesn't. So, I was like a little jealous.
Oh.
I like to go on the tracker and see it, and then I look at mine. It says did not finish. But I wish I would print you out a certificate. We should make our own certificate just for the 17 hours and 58 second club.
Yeah, and you know what? Like as I was on a flight, so I got home from Ironman, and I immediately had to get on a plane to go do a quick research trip before the semester started. And I was on a flight, and I was wearing my jacket because, like, I pretty much wear Ironman branded everything right now.
You're wearing one now.
I am in fact wearing an Ironman shirt right now.
I did notice that your wristband is no longer on.
No, I clipped that before I went on my research trip because when you're handling rare books and materials, you can't have anything that like might make it moist or damp, right? Because
I would think that was a rare material.
Right. Well, it is. Like I did tape it back together and put it around my finisher medal.
I see the medal rack up there. It's very impressive.
So I got on the flight, and the flight attendant, this like big male flight attendant, looks at my jacket and he's like, "Did you run that race?" And I was like, "Yes." And he was like, "Did you win that race?" And I was like, "I was the very last finisher." And he was like, "Well, then you won. You outlasted everyone else."
That's right. You did. You did. So, all right. So that's the story. That is
the story.
That's an incredible day. I'm glad you got it. I'm glad you got it down. So you've had a couple weeks or a week and a half now to think it over. Is there Ironman Part 2 in your future?
So when I saw Mike that first loop, sort of the first thing I told him was, "I am never fucking doing this again." In those words. And when we came off the race, like, and we had discussed beforehand, like, if there was a DNF, we would probably do this. And Mike wants to go back for a rematch, understandably so. I will never do Tremblant again because I don't need to cry my heart out on Duplessis. I'm all good. I've faced that demon. But it took all of a week for me to say, I would really like a finisher certificate.
Yeah.
Even though I've never downloaded one before.
Well, it's funny. It's like I said it to myself the other day. Like after I kind of soaked in my finish from this year, I said, if this was my first one, and that 58 seconds would nag at me enough that I would have to do it again. But it doesn't nag at me anymore because I'd done it before, so it doesn't really. But if it was my first one, I think it would have bothered me enough that I would have had to try again.
I kind of like it because it means I'll actually remember my finish time.
Yeah.
Like, I never remember my finish time. I barely remember my PRs, but I will remember my first Ironman finish time.
Yeah, there's no forgetting that one, that's for sure. So anything specific in mind? I mean, obviously, if you're not doing Tremblant, then obviously I go to Lake Placid next.
Well, we're looking at actually something very, very different. We're thinking of trying a flat course. Just for like a complete course. Yeah, and it's not about like, there's no such thing as an easy Ironman.
No.
Let me just there. So it's not about like, oh, you want to do something easier. No, I would like to do something different. And we live in Amherst, which is just north of Buffalo. And to get to anywhere that has hills, you have to drive for a half hour. So our bike workouts, add an hour to your bike workout because you have to commute to get there. And that's ridiculous. It turned the already kind of untenable situation into something that was just awful. So I was like, if we're going to do it again, excuse me, and I understand that you want to do Tremblant again, just please not next year. Maybe we should try something that like more closely mimics the
local.
Yeah, the terrain around where we are. Because it's just going to be a little kinder on our home life.
So anything in mind? Maryland?
Well, actually, we're looking at Florida.
Okay.
Florida, Arizona. Things are a little weird because, like I said, I'm an academic, so I have to kind of plan around the semester. I can't really take off in the middle to go.
I feel like we can go through all the different races and we can have like a whole little. We should probably do that one podcast. That would be interesting. I hesitate to do it here only because we're like 90 minutes in. This has been great, by the way.
You can have me back anytime.
I know. We could talk about this forever. We're going to have the podcast going to be longer than the race.
18 hours on it.
That'd be a record podcast.
But yeah, we're just thinking something really, really different. And you just kind of pick your poison with Ironman. And for this first one, my priority was a kind swim. I got that.
Yep.
And now that I'm not as nervous about a swim, now I would like a kind bike, please.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you do consider Maryland, because Maryland is known for being flat, it's also known for being very windy. We could talk about that another time. If you're interested, we can definitely chat about that one. But I just want to say, congratulations. Welcome to the club. What an amazing achievement. What an amazing day for you. I'm so glad you got to tell the story too. It was nice to hear it because, I tell you, the one thing I forgot to mention because we were just I really just wanted to hear your story. But, I saw you coming back and it was like 11:45 at night and I fell asleep. And I woke up the next day and I'm like, oh, gee, I wonder how Danielle did it. And I got to tell you, you were still kind of expected to be on the outside. Yeah. Looking in. So I didn't really know. And I was kind of expecting, I was like, because I knew you had you had a ways to go and you had to, carry a good pace for a ways to go. And you did it. So I think there's a lot to be proud of there. I'm sure you are. It's a great story about your dad too. I mean, you got to love that. I mean, it's nothing like when, a family member just shows pride and joy in you. So I think that's great.
Yeah, it was just magical, and we are so lucky to have the support we have. I am so lucky that Mike was able to come back on the course for me because I really think him being there saved the race. I would not have persevered if he hadn't done that math. We wouldn't have had the same day if we hadn't had my parents and Rachel with us. We are just so lucky. So and all of the amazing volunteers at Tremblant.
Can we mention Beads of Courage real quick?
Yeah. So Beads of Courage is a really cool organization. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. Beadsofcourage.org. They, you buy a bead kit and you wear on a safety pin, you wear 2 beads doing whatever it is you're doing, an Ironman or if you're a first responder, being a policeman or a firefighter or whatever. And then you send one of the beads back and you keep one. And the bead is given to a child undergoing treatment for severe childhood illness, cancer, or whatever it is they're undergoing on a day when they have a bad day, when they need a little bit of hope. So I carried on Tremblant, I carried 2 charms for a friend. My friend Katie's son, Jack, was diagnosed with ALL last year, and he has been fighting that. So I carried a little shield for him and then a mermaid for his little sister, Lily. So they could have, just a little thing, a token that had gone the distance with me and hopefully to give them a little light in the darkness. So get involved, check them out, beadsofcourage.org.
I hope they took a little extra from your effort that day too.
Well, I think they definitely gave me a little extra. Yeah, so
that's true. Great. Give and take there. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Danielle. It was an absolute joy to have you and great to hear the story behind, what everyone was watching that evening.
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity. This was so much fun.
Yeah, me too. All right. With that, we'll call it quits for the day. What a great story, guys. I tell you, we've been doing kind of this Ironman podcast now. I really think that I could have every single participant in this race come on and every story would be different and every story would be amazing. So, repetitive or not, I don't mind telling them. I think I even got another Ironman after this one. I love the stories. That's what, they're all there. And we can, like I said, hour and a half, we can talk about this thing forever. So, that being said, we'll wrap this up for today. And always remember, every day is an ordinary day unless you make it extraordinary. So get after it, guys.
remember to like our video and subscribe to our channel.